It's summertime, and that means that school is out and the kids are at home. And what are you going to do with them? Well, if you've been thinking about, well, I'll just plop them in front of the TV for a few hours, or maybe just put them on the iPad for a bit. Today, we're going to talk about how screen time can affect your child. And I don't know if you've ever met a young boy who doesn't like dinosaurs. I remember my three younger brothers loved dinosaurs when they were kids. And there was this turning point around the early 90s where this big purple dinosaur started coming on TV. And maybe you remember it if you're around my age or older. And his name was Barney. And what was so different about Barney was that he was starting to have more interaction with the children. There was definitely Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood a few years earlier and things of Sesame Street, those kinds of things. And that was really a turning point in television when it started to be more interactive and we really started to see a higher amount of time when children were spending in front of the TV. Now, was watching Barney or Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood or Sesame Street bad? Not necessarily, but was it the best thing? I don't know. The debate could be done on either side of those. Before we get too far into the details, if we haven't met before, my name is Jessica Bawag, and I am a speech language pathologist and owner of Fluent Children's Therapy, a private speech therapy clinic here in Tacoma, Washington. And I love to just hop on here every once in a while and share with you some nuggets of wisdom that I've learned along the years working with children and their families to help you make better decisions for your own life and what's best for you and your family. And we'd love to talk about some of the frequently asked questions that we hear parents come into the clinic talking about. And screen time is definitely a hot topic in that sense. Now, you may be wondering, what exactly is screen time? Is it TV? Is it iPad? Is it computer? Is it the phone? Really, it's all of the above. When we're looking at what screen time actually means, it's any time that a child or an individual is in front of a screen, whether watching something, using social media, or playing games. And again, this goes for both adults and children, but today we're really going to focus on children and their development over time to see how screen time can affect it. The research, I will say from the get-go, is really all new because the technology is so new in the scheme of things. So you may think, well, it's not that new, but over the years and the decades that research has been conducted, screen time and the effects that it has on children are really still very new because we have to watch to see how it affects children as they're growing up and growing older, and we just often haven't had enough time to be able to do that. But in case you've been looking at articles and researching the internet, you have probably come across some more newer studies that have been coming out with some preliminary or new research evidence and studies that are showing how screen time can affect children's development. And we're specifically looking at social and language. So the general harm is that screen time is mostly a solitary activity. It's mostly just passive. Either your child is in front of a TV or a phone or an iPad, and they're just sitting there receiving information. It's not always interactive, where there's not this back and forth. When you think of something like a conversation or a relationship, as any type of social interaction, there's this back and forth thing that goes on. One person says something, the other person responds. That person says something, the other person responds. When it comes to screen time, there's not that back and forth interaction most of the time. Most of the time, even for the educational games and the apps and the TV shows and whatnot, even if it is Dora, Barney, Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Daniel the Tiger, whatever you call it, where there is that interaction, a lot of the times it's just really passive information. Your child is receiving that information, watching it, but not always having that interaction per se. And every minute spent in front of a screen is time taken away from human contact. So if it's just your child sitting in front of it and there's no other people around, or no other people interacting with them, they're not getting that really rich social interaction and language interaction and development with other people. And again, we're really focusing on younger children here, who need a lot of that because their brains are still developing, their neural pathways are still forming, and if they're not having that human interaction around, they're not getting that opportunity to build those connections in their brains, especially for younger children. Again, we're talking ages 2 and under. The brain is growing at such a rapid rate. Neurons are firing, old ones are being pruned away, new pathways are being created. The brains are flexible and they easily soak up knowledge. So again, when we're talking about that, the scientific term is called serve and return. When we look at conversations, social interactions, we're just not getting that with the screen, even though they are often intended to be that way. If there's not another adult or human person sitting next to the child, helping them and guiding them in how to respond to the prompts that may be coming from the TV shows or the games, they're really not getting that serve and return. They're really only getting one-sided things. And if you've ever been in a one-sided conversation, you know how dull and boring that can be and how easily it is to just check out or zone out of it. So things to keep in mind really. This was a research study done from Harvard University about that serve and return and that human interaction between baby and trusted adult or caregiver. And that is really what is so crucial to brain development, especially when it comes to language and socialization. And that young age 2 and under is really the optimum time to be learning these skills and to be developing them. You may be thinking, well, my child's not even talking or having conversations yet at that young age. But really, they're soaking up everything in their environment and they're learning from every interaction that they have, as small as it can be. And you may not think that the screen time is that dangerous if it's only every once in a while or an hour a day or whatever the case is. But again, that's taking away time where they could be exploring their environment, they could be communicating through laughing and facial expressions with other humans. So just keep that in mind as we kind of go through our conversation today. There is no shame in anything we're talking about. If you've had your child use screen time or have access to screens and you're feeling any guilt right now, know that that is not our intention. It's just to inform you so that you can make decisions for your family and children that you feel confident about. Really, when it comes kind of going back to that serve and return, babies at that young age under 2 are really starting to do more cooing and they're observing other people's body language and body movements and facial gestures from their mom or dad or caregiver. They're starting to mimic speech and learning words for the first time, and they do that best from other human individuals. Again, even though there are many creative programs out there that try to imitate that, human interaction is going to be the best way for your child to learn that. And they can't see any of that. They can't explore their environment. They can't crawl around, bump into things, learn where their body is in space if they're stuck sitting in front of a screen. It is more challenging to quickly build a secure language foundation from the age of 2 and under when they have access to screen time. So really the numbers are showing that anything, any screen time really for children under the age of 2 is not recommended, is what they're seeing. And then we can kind of chat about 2 and up and what that may look like. The numbers are showing that a study was done that showed kids between the ages of 2 to 5 years old are currently watching anywhere from 2 to 3 hours of screen time a day. And when I saw that, I was like, oh my goodness, that's a lot. That's almost half of a school day. That's almost the entire school day for some daycares and preschools. And imagine your child sitting in front of a screen for that length of time. 20% of babies, by a study conducted by Dr. Birkin, 20% of babies saw at 18-month wellness checkups that their screen time was 28 minutes a day. So babies, again, we're looking at 0 to 2. Even at that young age, this doctor had a study that showed that 20% of those age range were still watching screen time at 28 minutes a day. And that's about half an hour. That's a good amount of time where your child, again, could be exploring and interacting with other people. And this study showed that with every additional 30 minutes, there was a 49% higher chance of an expressive speech delay. So the more screen time that this doctor found in her study, the more likely this child was eventually going to develop an expressive speech delay. So now the question becomes, is the research there to show that there's a direct connection between screen time and speech delays? That's what you may think, but honestly, at this time, like we talked about earlier, there's currently no definitive answer on that because there is still more research needed. There hasn't been enough time that's passed. There haven't been enough individuals and babies involved in these studies to really show that there's a definite link between screen time and language delays. On the other hand, more and more doctors and professionals are seeing the effects that it can have. This technology is relatively still new, and especially with more mobile technology, with things like phones and iPads, you're able to take it on the go. It's not just the TV screen. You can't bring the TV into your car or at the restaurant as you had not had access in the past, but now you can bring screens with you everywhere. And so that capability is still fairly new, so they haven't had enough time to do the research on all of that. But you may know for sure, what we do know for sure is that even without more evidence, human interaction is going to be the best way for your child to learn, because that's really the only true way that your child can develop social skills, expressive speech, and language development through that human interaction. When it comes to adults talking to their children and vice versa, or even just being together, even if mom and dad are on the couch reading and baby is next to you playing on the floor and exploring the living room, that interaction alone, you may not think, well, they're not really talking or playing together. Now you may be considering, well, I don't have time to spend with my child talking to them 24 hours a day. That interaction alone, mom and dad on the couch reading, baby on the floor exploring, that alone is even better than having baby in front of a screen, because again, baby is exploring, learning to crawl around, feel different things in the environment, play with toys, learn how to read mom and dad's expressions on their face and their movements. All of that interaction is so crucial and necessary for your child, your baby especially, to learn how to be in the world, to learn how to read cues and see the environment and learn about their body. And even that alone, even when you're not directly talking to your child or playing with your child, that is even better than having them sit in front of a screen. So all things to keep in mind. And there's also skill. I was thinking as I was putting this together and I was talking with my husband, I said, well, what did we do as kids? I mean, we're not that old, but this technology is so new that when we were children and babies growing up, we didn't have this. And there's value in a child learning to be bored every once in a while, no matter what their age, 2 and under or 2 to 7 or whatever the case is. There's value in learning how to wait and how to be patient and how to be creative in the sense of picking up sticks and climbing a tree and going out in the fields and even just having a cardboard box. And it may seem old fashioned at this time, but really when it comes to the children that we're seeing in our clinic and how their social development can be affected and their language can be affected, that use of screen time can really affect lots of areas of their development. And so I would encourage you to think about that. And now I know life happens. And I know you're on a long road trip, or you just want to have a date night and go out with your spouse and just not have to worry about occupying your child. I get it. I totally do. And those are choices that you have to make as a parent. Do I bring the iPad along? Do I just have them sit there and scream while everyone in the restaurant looks at me? Do we just stay at home another night and just have food or order in? I don't have any answers for you. I'm sorry. But I just want to encourage you to maybe think outside the box. I had a parent the other day come in and say, I just don't know how to balance my desire for my child to keep up on technology and all the new things that are coming out and everything that's coming out with how screen time can affect children. And so I know the moms and the parents that come in to see us, they know that screen time isn't the best solution most of the time, but they're grappling with how do I balance this? And I would just encourage you to say, there's going to be plenty of time for your child to learn technology. Even if you didn't have screen time for your child for the first 2 years and you decided to introduce them at age 5 or 10 or whatever your choice is, there's going to be plenty of time. You would be amazed at how quickly children learn how to navigate technology and how to use it for their benefit. So if that's a concern where you're like, well, I hear what you're saying, Jessica, but I don't want them to be behind their peers in their use of technology, don't worry. Kids' brains are flexible and they will learn new skills. And the technology these days is becoming so much more user friendly that even if you waited till age 10, per se, I didn't get a cell phone till I was in college and I use technologies just fine now. So if that's a concern of yours, I would just encourage you to really consider all of the research out there and how it can affect your child's socialization and language development, and really just have fun with your child this summer. I encourage you to just spend some time together, even if you're not directly, communicating, talking 24 hours a day. Just being with your child can make such a big difference in their social development. It may not seem like it now, but years down the line, you may look back and say, wow, that time together was really precious. So I hope, if I don't see you for a few months, I hope that you have a great summer. We will be back in a couple of weeks for another topic about communication, and I hope you have a good weekend. Take care.